अस्सलामुअलैकुम, आप देख रहे हैं प्रोग्राम दुनिया मेरी नज़र से। आज के प्रोग्राम का मौजू बड़ा मुख्तलिफ होगा, आज के प्रोग्राम का अंदाज़ बड़ा मुख्तलिफ होगा। आज के प्रोग्राम में हमारी जो गुफ्तगू होगी वो होगी पहले सेगमेंट में ईरान के हवाले से, ईरान अमेरिका जंग के हवाले से, और वो गुफ्तगू करने के लिए हमने सर्बिया से एक बड़ी ख़ास मेहमान को दावत दी। इसी वजह से आज के प्रोग्राम की जो गुफ्तगू का बेशतर हिस्सा होगा वो अंग्रेज़ी ज़बान में होगा, तो इसके लिए हम आपसे माजत खा भी हैं। सो ज्वाइनिंग अस फ्रॉम सर्बिया, शी इज़ जियोपॉलिटिकल एनालिस्ट मिस येलेना नोवाकोव. Miss Novakov, how are you?
I'm well, thank you for having me on.
Ms. Novakov, there's a debate going on that what would be the future of this Iran-Israel conflict? Do you think there is any kind of conclusion, something substantial? Because as of now, what we see, everything is so fragile that one day we have a peace talk and another day there is a bombardment in Iran or any other region because of this uncertainty. So how do you think, how long it will take to conclude, and will this ever be able to conclude?
It's hard to say how long it will take, but I think at this point it seems very likely that it will take longer than 60 days. And we have already heard from the United States that they are willing to prolong that given time period. So that is likely what is going to happen. Now, when it comes to these talks, in Doha, I think they were there to basically just keep the line of communication open, because as we see, nothing significant was achieved. There are many points of contention there, some larger, some smaller. And I mean, if the Strait of Hormuz is something that they can agree on more easily, which is an incredibly complicated matter in itself, then I think it will take a while for them to negotiate what the deal will look like when it comes to the nuclear program.
Talking about Strait of Hormuz, you said the Doha talks were more about making this talks in like continuation. So do you think this Strait of Hormuz resumption would be as it was prior to war, or there would be any other change regarding fee structure? Would there be any charges Iran would be taking it from Strait of Hormuz?
I do expect Iran to insist on some sort of tolls, like we've seen before. I don't think Iran is going to insist to charge for the passage itself, because that would be illegal. However, I do expect that they will insist in cooperation with Oman on a situation that is like the Panama Canal or the Suez Canal, where they charge tolls for basically everything but the passage itself. So, for example, inspection, safety, etc. At the same time, I do expect that we will see a lot of pushback from the United States side when it comes to that, because as of right now, they insist to return to the previous state, which I don't think that these new circumstances allow. And Iran, from this point of view, unless something major changes, Iran has no reason to necessarily accept
that. Talking about the US, recently just Donald Trump said that Iran has almost accepted most of the terms and conditions which US proposed for this agreement. Moreover, he also added that they have destroyed the Iranian new radar system. So do you think, is it something which Donald Trump is portraying as a message to his people, or is there any kind of reality attached to this thing?
We have heard from both sides that they have won the war, right? They have destroyed the other side. Neither is entirely true, because both countries, as well as every other country in the world, has lost by this war occurring, right? But when it comes to the memorandum itself, it definitely benefits Iran, and I think it's safe to say that if we're looking through that black and white lens, the United States definitely lost this war. Now Donald Trump is approaching the midterms, and he's incredibly unpopular. This war has been incredibly unpopular, even amongst young Republicans and some older Republicans, which is his primary base, right? So he does need to amp up the rhetoric before these midterms, but also to keep his own popularity afloat, even though now it's in low 30s, I believe. So that is historically low.
So what I understand, that all these are just optics. As of now, Iran is enjoying an upper hand over USA, and probably Donald Trump is feeling the heat because of this upcoming elections in US.
Yes, I would say so. That said, I wouldn't say that Iran has gone through this war completely unscathed. I mean, they have lost their nuclear sites last year, right? But they have experienced further military losses as well as the loss of civilian lives. And at a moment at which we've seen major dissatisfaction amongst Iranian people with the leadership. So I think a certain change is coming to Iran as well. Not necessarily that they won't have an Ayatollah anymore. I think they will. But I think long term, now I didn't see that this happening tomorrow, but I think long term we will see some change in Iranian society as well, where the Ayatollah might become more of a symbolic figure rather than an actual ruler.
And do you think that agreement is something which is substantial, which both parties are looking at, or this status quo of this ceasefire continuation would only prolong, and we might not see any kind of agreement at the later stage, and this status quo just remains as it is?
It is possible that that is going to happen, that there will be some sort of a status quo solution, if we can call that a solution, which will be acceptable for both sides. And now what that might look like exactly, I think it's too soon to tell, because things are changing really fast. Both sides are sticking to what they originally said.
Yes.
Though what might happen is that, for example, I'm just giving an offhand example right now, that Iran and Oman might start charging those fees, and that the United States will formally protest, or let's say use those frozen assets or the reparations fund as a leverage, and then we will see kind of a stalemate when it comes to unfreezing the assets, or the United States and the Gulf states giving parts of that what really is a retribution fund for Iran. So we'll see that kind of a diplomatic back and forth, and so that would probably be that kind of a status quo solution that wouldn't really end the conflict.
You just talk about the frozen assets. Iran has been continuously asking that all these assets which were frozen by US and all the sanctions which were imposed by US on Iran, do you think this situation can be rectified, and this would somehow cool down the temperatures and make things more viable to reach some kind of agreement? Or do you still think that uranium would be something which US is more interested before reaching to any kind of agreement?
I think uranium enrichment is definitely a major deal for the United States. But the thing is, we don't know how much of the enriched uranium Iran has been able to save from the last year's war, nor the location of that uranium storage or multiple storages. We've also heard pushback from the Iranian side when it comes to the International Atomic Agency's presence in Iran. But any kind of new beginning of the war in terms of military activity wouldn't be beneficial for the United States, because they have seen now that military force is not enough to win a war when a country can use its geostrategic location to its own benefit, especially when it has such an important location as Iran does.
And talking about, and again talking about this agreement, all this activity has been happening between Iran and US, but the one key element about this is Israel. And what we have seen, that Israel is not interested in talking to Iran, neither interested in any kind of agreement, and at least I haven't seen any kind of things between Israel and US ever in past, that US president is almost bashing Israeli Prime Minister. So do you think that Israel is one of the key factors going forward with this agreement, as this agreement would need an endorsement from Israel, which is, as of now, does not exist?
Well, we mentioned the status quo solutions, right? I think this new agreement between Israel and Lebanon is one such thing, that if you kind of look a little bit into it, can bring further instability to the Levant, but it did temporarily also bring some sort of a halt to the fighting. So I think the solution between Iran and the United States might reflect that. And in such a condition, Israel would not necessarily openly insist on the resumption of fighting, at least not to the degree we see now, although Israel is also heading into elections. And as I've mentioned before multiple times, it is also personal for Netanyahu, because if he does lose this election, he is, by the way, incredibly unpopular in Israel, even with the crowd that is pro-war.
Yes.
So if he does lose, he's facing that corruption trial, and he might not just lose power, he might also end up in jail. So there is one thing that we might hear from Netanyahu, and the other thing that might actually happen prior to the elections and even after the elections in Israel.
And one more thing just to add on this, because I was just seeing the New York Times and US news channels. There was a news flashing today that there was a possible assassination attack plot allegedly to assassinate the negotiators of Iran, and that was timely communicated by US to Iran, and that assassination attempt was stopped. So do you still think that Israel would allow this kind of agreement or this kind of arrangement to happen? Because as of now, this is going nowhere.
Right. Well, Israel has an incredibly strong lobby in the United States. That's undeniable, right? But we also have to remember that the United States still has a lot of leverage over Israel. That would, of course, take the members of Congress to stop taking AIPAC money, right? But the United States is still able to kind of stop Israel by threatening to stop aid to Israel, whether military or financial aid. So the United States, if the situation happens, could stop Israel. Now, Israel might not even insist on overtly resuming this fighting now, but will certainly continue to do in the future, whether that is through these smaller attacks on Lebanon, perhaps starting something in Syria, which is honestly not excluded at this point, even though al-Shara is denying that he is going to get involved. We're, of course, yet to see that, especially with his history prior to becoming the president of Syria. So it's not, I wouldn't dismiss Israel trying to manipulate other actors in the region into starting a new conflict on the other side.
But why it is so easy for Israel every time that to either they are going to able to manipulate the other players or even USA, or they are able to drag USA in wars which were not designed to be their wars. So what key factor, what strategic importance trial have which we don't see as an analyst?
Right. Well, that's two words that are key, right? Money and politics, right? We have in America, we have legalized lobbying, we have money in politics, we have not just AIPAC, which is definitely the strongest Israeli lobby in America, but there are also plenty of smaller ones, even some that kind of present themselves as progressive. So they are very pro-human rights, very pro-women, etc. But behind that are also lobbying for Israel and paying pro-Israel candidates. So the key issue and what is giving Israel so much power is money in politics. And until that is abandoned in America specifically, Israel is going to remain a key player in the Levant and in the Middle East.
That's true. But lastly, we've seen there were rounds of talks in Islamabad, there were round of talks in Doha, there were some technical arrangements. What do you foresee coming up next? What's in the itinerary for US or Iran about the peace talks?
Right. Well, of course, we will have to wait until the funeral ceremonies, which are going to last a few days, end in Iran. And I think after that, we might see some sort of a conversation about when the next high-level talks are going to happen. We've had these technical talks, and depending on how the situation develops, I do suspect that we might hear possibility for new technical talks maybe within 3 weeks to a month, and perhaps that could even be in Pakistan, given that these ones were in Doha.
And lastly, what do you suggest that on how many points out of the given agenda, most of these parties have some kind of consensus, and what could be point of escalation that okay, that might not be acceptable to either of the parties?
There could be so many points of escalation.
And still we are hopeful?
I've mentioned that currently the biggest issue is the fees, the potential fees that Iran might charge in the Strait of Hormuz. Okay. There is that possible solution of status quo, but if the United States continue to insist that there are not going to be any fees, that can be the first point of escalation, even though the Strait of Hormuz is first on the list when it comes to something that they might agree.
and the pressures going inside US, the political pressures on Donald Trump, do you think would he be able to go in any kind of a new war? Because as of we speak right now, when Donald Trump was not in power, he was someone who was opposed to the idea of having wars. He just turned off the war idea of Afghanistan. So would he be able to just start something that is unlikely Donald Trump?
Well, he started this, or actually he
And
ended this
continue
war
this,
with Iran. But
rather
he ended
continue this
this war
war.
in Iran because the economy started to suffer and America started to burn through strategic reserves of oil. So anything else is going to bring it up even higher inflation and is going to create more internal problems, which I don't think Donald Trump needs now, a few months before the midterm elections. So that is highly unlikely to happen now. We might see some resumption when it comes to fighting with Iran, though I personally don't expect that to happen, at least in the next month. But any new wars elsewhere, I highly doubt that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Yelena Nawakov, for your precious time and insight. And definitely, it's something which is worth waiting for, because this Iran and Israel conflict and the U.S. involvement in this has made this entire scene something a global cinema, and everyone in the global powers are so much impacted in this thing that this is something to watch on. Stay tuned with us. We're just going to be right back, and we're going to talk about Balochistan and Gwadar port. Thank you. Just take a break. We'll be right back.